And before we start, I just want to bring up something that I talked about before. That is, there seems to be a series of these reports kind of guised as studies that show up in different forms and essentially have the same message. You know, cannabis can do some stuff, but it is kind of dangerous. So we got to be pretty restrictive and, you know, regulated about it and stuff. And there's another one that I just read about recently. I have not read through it. The University of Michigan participated with it, CDC and some other stuff, and it refers to cannabis deaths in it and some other crap like that. So I see the continuation of this pattern. There's a building of pseudo evidence to claim that, you know, probably we need to keep heavier regulations around for longer, maybe to slow down the people seeing the nature of cannabis and naturally, you know, easing restrictions on it, which I think is what we all believe should be going down. And we started off a little restrictive, but then we're able just to peel that back as it gets going. Anyway, I guess I'm gonna turn this over to Rick in a second. I'm interested in
audio's off.
I'm sorry, can you hear me still?
No, the audio was real bad. I couldn't make out anything you were saying.
It's still audible, but it's not as clear as normal.
I got it. So I guess I just like to hear from people. This particular group, is cannabis as safe as we think it is? And, you know, if not, what do we need to caution people about? Rick, what do you think about that?
Well, cannabis is not as safe as I think Jamie thinks it is. I can tell you I suffer from cannabis emesis syndrome. I oftentimes have illnesses caused from cannabis too much. I think we often see people that dab too much and have consequences, people that have too many medibles and have consequences. We do have to warn people about dosing. I don't think that the cannabis itself is detrimental to the human being, but I do think it's irresponsible to say that there's nothing that can harm you about cannabis ever. Not that Jamie's ever said that, but the point being that there are some issues to be concerned with. Did you want to retort, Jamie, before I kick it over to Deb?
No, I mean, I that's a little bit too far for me, but that's fine. I mean, I would say like the thing where the edibles and misjudging that type of thing is something I would definitely warn people about.
So that's defined as harm.
The other stuff I'm not necessarily in line with, but I am interested in what everybody thinks about it.
Yep, sure. And Deb Young, of course, you've been doing medibles, edibles, and all kinds of ubles.
Yeah, I think that all the propaganda that we heard, all the screeching and the carrying on about how society was just going to explode and fall apart once legalization hit and people were going to be overdosing from edibles and, you know, the devil's oil and all this stuff. None of this has happened, Rick. I understand there's individual instances, but we don't really hear anything happening. I believe that on the whole, cannabis is safe. As any substance, as anything, you know, you're going to want to, some people are going to be maybe a little more sensitive than others, but I don't think any of the stuff that they said was going to happen has happened. If anything, I think it's more mellow than even I would have expected. And you don't hear instances of teenagers overdosing on medibles and this going on and people going crazy. So, you know, I kind of agree with Jamie. I find it to be a very safe substance, and I don't think it's really put any type of strain on society at all once it's legalized.
I'd agree with the no strain on society. I'd also agree that the number of people that use cannabis versus the number of negative reactions is really small. Millions of people use cannabis all the time, and we very rarely hear about things. Jim Salim, you got a lot of experience with psychedelics and cannabis too. What does your experience tell you about this question at hand? Jim, I think you're on mute, my brother.
Thank you very much. I have to agree with, you know, everybody here in some form or another. I think moderation is important. That's for anything that you're going to take. And then if you're going to use cannabis, it's like, do you want to use it on a regular basis, or are you only going to use it when you think you might need it? Because, you know, there's so much science to it. And I think what holds people back in a lot of ways and adds the fear to it is not doing the research on the endocannabinoid system. And they almost give themselves their own placebo by reading some of these, you know, more fear-based articles on cannabis. So I think that the biggest thing is, you know, try it, do it in moderation. It's a harmless, non-toxic plant that can actually help you. And if it works, great. But moderation obviously is, I think, a big key to this.
One of the things we see is that people oftentimes will take a grain of information, and then when viewed through their particular lens, they see it to represent whatever they wanted it to represent. And oftentimes those things can be misrepresented. And then we have stories that run across the internet that are really damaging. Colin McDougall, I see you over there doing the hand twist. You know, cannabis, sometimes something to be a little cautious about, right?
Definitely. I think that, like you said, Rick, sometimes people do kind of have like this, and I feel like I have it a little bit, especially like after I eat. I don't want to like smoke cannabis like right away. Usually it kind of can like make my stomach a little upset. But I know a couple people who do a lot of dabs and have had similar, more severe problems. It's called a hypermesis system. I'm not sure. It's cannabis hypermesis syndrome, I think is what it's called. But for the most part, the worst experience I've ever had is just eating too much medibles, and they can just be overwhelming like that. When I worked as a bud tender, I remember these older women would come in like once a month, and one time they told me that their husband like didn't listen to what I had told him and ate too much of a brownie, and he was like stuck on the ground for like a little while. And
things happen, but nobody died.
It's scary if you don't know what's going on.
And it just I would just caution people who are especially new to it about taking the right amount. But overall, I think that cannabis is pretty much harmless, and everything that I was taught, like growing up, about drugs, and I just lumped marijuana in that. All of those like negative rumors about it came out to be false from what I've been studying.
That's been the issue for a while. It's on the list.
Did his own research and proved the facts that all those things were false.
Well, in America, we're all about graduated risks. You know, is this more risky than that? Is that more risky than this? Which do we approve? Which do we deny? When you start looking at the entire list of controlled substances, cannabis doesn't even deserve to be there. There are so many items that are more dangerous. We've talked about this all the time. Aspirin kills people. Too much water kills people. Too much cannabis, not killing people. So in America, the big contradiction of Schedule 1 just makes it impossible for me to take everything government says seriously. Some things I take seriously. Some things I can verify with my own eyes, but they perpetuate a lie. And that means they can't be trusted all the time.
I agree. It definitely does not belong on the list anywhere. And the discussion used to be, can we get it dropped to a Schedule 2 or something like that? Every time it goes down, it has lesser penalties. So I suppose that's good, but it's still inappropriate for it to be anywhere on there. None of the descriptions really match up with it.
Schedule none, right? Schedule none, just off.
Schedule none, and then the legislature will pass a bill that says that's the harshest schedule it could possibly be.
Flip-flop the standard. Well, again, the drug war itself was predicated on falsehoods and misinformation and racism and a quest for power by those who already had it. So it's difficult for us to find logic in the behaviors of the drug war or in the rules that were created in order to maintain it. So those fetters are something America is going to have to shed over time. And we can only hope to be part of the solution that helps to get rid of some of those things, both statewide and on a federal basis. Everyone on this call, Jim, Colin, the rest of us, we've all been involved in legalization locally and statewide. Those are enduring changes to society that we've made, and they help to right-size police departments too. Are you convinced cannabis is 100% safe for the human body, or do we still see some stuff every once in a while makes us worried about having too much?
What do you need to warn people about if so?
Man, I have absolutely no fear of cannabis. I think maybe that one time I ate just a little too many milligrams of brownie, but that, just got me to sleep really, really good. Other than that,
For 4 days, right?
for 4 days.
And then one time we were at Third Coast a few years ago, and Ray ate an edible. Thought it said 20 milligrams on it.
Yeah, I was
I
like,
had to take a little nap for a minute.
felt like
I
was
remember-
kind of-
One time at Vehicle City Social, where we couldn't find Ray for the longest time, and we were all searching and looking, and he was actually laying on a sofa on the stage. Actually, it was hiding in plain sight, but he was horizontal for a long time.
hell yeah. I had one of
Classic.
sweet, sweet naps.
That's right.
The hardest part though is when you wake back up and you're like still high and like your eyes are like trying to shut and you're like trying your hardest to like keep them open.
Trying to lift your head up. I was in a coma at opening day at Comerica Park one day with my head in my lap. I could not lift my head. I was conscious of everything going on, but I could not speak. Couldn't lift my head for the entire game. I thought Dave was going to have to carry me out of the place. And
I shouldn't drive
I don't
into
know.
that condition.
I rallied at the end, and managed to stagger to the car, but it was really tight. So yeah, I mean, but I don't consider that dangerous. Right? That's all part of the fun, It's like,
When people get themselves
like you don't go
whacked like
swimming
that,
alone.
I
I don't go out
agree.
medicating alone.
when people get themselves whacked like that on alcohol, they buy that journey, soak their inhibition, in their frontal lobe. When people get that high on cannabis, they don't tend to not have inhibitions anymore and think it's a good idea to jump in the car and start driving around. You're going, oh, that'd be a really bad idea. I'm half awake.
Yeah. Yeah, that was just a brownie I ate. It was a really intense brownie, boy.